But again, usually what you'll see is just on this screen that we're recording afterwards. So Kohlberg, like I said, he was a follower of Piaget. And he really believed that children just didn't have what it took on the inside to make the right choices. So that's what parents are for. That's what parenting. So he believed that each of those stages were divided then into 2 stages. I haven't seen a lot, and those of you who've taken the test recently, I haven't seen a lot of making sure that you know what's necessarily if it's like 3, 4, 5, 6. They're always divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6. So if you see like a 5, 6, it's the same as stage 3 as Kohlberg. Okay.
Your thing keeps going in and out.
Is it going in and out for everybody?
A little bit for me too.
Yes.
Yes. Let me close some windows here. I bet I have a lot of windows open. Is it my sound or my picture or both?
Your sound. It'll be like you'll be talking and then you're saying something, but we don't hear you. It'll just go completely silent and then you come back in.
Echo.
Okay. Okay. Make sure I close all my windows. Is that any better?
Yeah.
Right now, yes.
That's better. Okay, let me know if I go in and out again.
Okay.
So I usually have really good internet. So we'll just if there's a problem, let me know. But I had like 17 windows open. I have 2 screens and 17 windows. Okay, so let's try that again. So Kohlberg was based on Piaget, a follower of Piaget. And what he said is that children really just didn't have what it took to do the right thing because it was the right thing to do. So parenting, part of our job was to do this. Okay. So what he felt was when they were younger, that it really was doing the right thing. They had no difference. They just didn't want to get in trouble. Okay. School age, good girl, bad girl level. What does that mean? Anybody?
I think that means where you like during that age you try to I guess you can say like fit in or like wanting to like be accepted by a certain group of kids, or if you're a guy you want to be accepted by your male friends, if you're a girl you'd be accepted by your girlfriend.
You got it. So there is a question sometimes on there that will say they didn't want to rat out their friends because we know what is it? Snitches end up in ditches. So what stage would they be in?
Conventional.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second, guys. I'm sorry. Hi. Are you trying to join the group?
Yeah, I can't get it. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Do you have the group link?
Can you just send it back to me?
I sure will. I sure will.
Thank you, because I need to get on. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So in that stage, we just know that that's that good girl, bad girl. That's what that looks like on a question. Okay. And then our last one is that older stage. So that last stage, give me an example of that universal principles. What does that mean?
Being morally right.
Give me an example.
I didn't think of one.
Okay, so the example I usually say is like Rosa Parks because, she knew it was against the law. However, the law didn't matter. All she really wanted to do was to join, to do whether she believed it was right or not. Okay. Probably we think of like, hi, I sent you the link. Can you put your email in your text? I'm in the middle of the session.
Can you send it to my email, please?
Just if you email me, you're in the text. Just send me your email.
Send your email?
Send me your email through text. Okay. Yeah. So the universal principles really were that it didn't matter what the law says. I was going to do what I thought was the best. So Kevorkian, everybody remember who he was?
No.
He was the one that tried to give us the right to do euthanasia before the law said we could. Okay, and he was arrested. He spent time in prison because he felt euthanasia was something that we should be able to do. And at the time, it was against the law. Is it against the law now? Not in all states. Okay, you live in Oregon, you actually have the right to kill yourself. So that's what that looks like according to Kohlberg. Kohlberg believed that very few people actually got there, that most of us stayed in that the second stage, that we just wanted to follow the rules to not get in trouble. Okay. When it comes to theorists in general, we kind of start from the back and go forward. So our first theorist was Freud. Before we had Freud, we didn't have any talk therapy. All we really did was like ice baths. We did, like electric shock therapy. So let's start with our first one, who is Freud. So for the test, psychodynamic, psychoanalytic, they all kind of mean the same thing for the test. So when we talk about Freud's stages, what do you think of?
Oral, anal, phallic, latent, genital.
OAPLG, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I've heard old ass people love gold. Old age. OAPLG. So what happens in that oral stage?
Breastfeeding.
Focuses on mouth.
Learn through oral fixation.
Okay. And okay, so they learn oral. But what happens if we get fixated? We get fixed, stuck.
It can cause behaviors like nail biting or smoking or overeating.
So you might have a question on the test that talks about, John is a 54-year-old man and he has issues with drinking. What stage would he be fixed in? And that would be your oral stage, because what Freud said is that if your oral stage wasn't satisfied, mom breastfed you too long or not long enough, you were stuck. Okay. Anal, we still use that one today. What is someone who has an anal personality? What does that mean?
They the ASS word.
I know lots of people who are that have nothing to do with their anal.
They say anal retentive can be really, really structured, exactly. Not very flexible.
Exactly. Sometimes my obsessive compulsive people. So, that sphincter muscle is tight. So if I was potty trained too early or too late, then I've got this tight sphincter muscle that still, rules my personality. Okay, so an anal personality, according to Freud, is there. So the question again might be, according to Freud, someone who was fixated in the anal stage might be, and those would be those kinds of things, stingy, holding back, all of those things. Okay.
Okay.
My phallic stage is divided into two, boy and girl. What are those?
Oedipus and Electra.
Electra is my
female.
Girl in love with father.
You got it. And Oedipus is my
boy in love with mother.
So where does castration come in there?
Oedipus.
Okay. It's Oedipus. That O is silent. It's Oedipus.
Oh, Oedipus.
And the boy felt like that if he was in love with his mother and he had a fear of castration. If his father found out, they had a fear of castration. But you might see a question that just says, little Johnny is having some surgery and he is worried about, something down there. And according to Freud, what would he be worried about? And he'd be worried about castration. So at that stage, also Freud believed that girls had penis envy, that we wished we had. Note when the ego and the superego develop, okay? Ego is when you're born. Your superego doesn't develop until you're about the age of 5, okay? So that phallic is 3 to 5. That's when we believe our superego developed. Any sex happen in the latent stage?
No.
And any question on the test that asks about actual intercourse or sex, according to Freud, is the genital stage. Okay. So any question someone is, a man is having trouble having intercourse, or he has fantasies, anything about sex, according to Freud, is the genital stage. He believed that from 12 on, that's kind of stage you were in. Okay. And we also know that phallic stage, we use that term still now. Phallic is that long, shape, phallic. So we use that term as well. Okay. So Freud talked about my id, ego, and superego. What are those?
Your id just trying to balance sex, aggression.
Oh, tell me in English.
Basically,
animal instincts.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Animal instincts.
Animal instincts. Oh, you said fatal instincts. Same thing. Yes. According to Freud, those are my drives. Okay.
Are y'all reading from a book?
No.
No.
And even if you tell me an answer, it sounds like it's come from a book, I will tell you to tell me in your own words. It won't do any good to tell you what the book says.
I just feel like I'm just so lost, and I'm trying to flip through this book.
Can you not see my screen?
No, and it's just me that's zoomed in on. Like,
you can turn your camera off if you don't want to, but can you not see my screen?
I see me on your screen.
I see her on your screen too.
Anybody else see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, you're in the corner.
Do you see my id, ego, and superego?
No.
I see some text off to the. There you go.
How about that?
Now.
Oh my! Wow. Okay.
You good now?
Yeah.
And I see your APGAR book, and I love APGAR. She's amazing for content. Read it. Read it front to back.
I'm going to. That's why I'm trying to keep up. Like, where is he?
Okay. And so what I really try to do is kind of is put the APGAR book in your own words. Because I think what happens if you don't really understand it, there's not going to be a question on the test that says, what is the id? It's going to ask you how the id operates. So that's why you really have to understand what it means when it's id, ego, and superego. Okay.
I'm planning on calling a friend and explaining this stuff to them in my own words so it can help me.
You just have to know it. That's, and I don't recommend that you memorize a lot of things. I do recommend that you do need to know the theories. And so that's why if you don't know them, then you can't apply them. Okay. So, and then our original theorist was Freud. He was the first one. And so my id, ego, and superego. And someone said basic drives. And that's what the id is supposed to be. My wants, my desires. Freud would say to eat, sleep, and procreate. That's what my id does. Okay. So my id says, I want. My id says, I want pizza. I want pizza. I want pizza all the time. I love pizza. I love pizza with cheese and meat and love. Id. My superego says to Pam, you cannot have pizza. Pizza's not good for you. You are a grown adult, girl. You cannot eat that much pizza. Eat a salad. My ego says, Pam, you can have a slice of pizza every once in a while. It'll be okay. And it's a current battle between my id and my superego. And the ego is the one that kind of keeps me sane. So if the question asked in general, what you're working with, what part of the personality, is always the ego. Who's making margaritas in that background?
Oh, yes, I can.
Blender. Margaritas. We're having tequila shots and okay. So according to Freud, then, my id, ego, and superego. Okay. All unconscious. What is in my preconscious, according to Freud?
Your ego?
It is my ego. What else would be there? What things can I access my preconscious?
Yeah, you can bring it to your conscious.
So what would be there?
Would it be like things that people say that like you try not to really believe, but then when somebody keeps saying like you're fat, you start to believe it, you consciously start to believe it?
That makes lots of sense, but Freud would not agree with you.
Okay.
Okay, so Freud, according to Freud, and again, remember when you're taking the test, you have to know which theorist, okay, which orientation, which perspective. So according to Freud, in my preconscious, what were things that I could recall if I really tried. Okay, so the last name of my first boyfriend, somebody's birthday, things from childhood, those were in my preconscious. Okay, and if I tried really hard, I could bring those up without having a therapist be there. I could do that myself. Okay, if you see the word subconscious on the test, that's never the correct answer. Subconscious and preconscious are sometimes used interchangeably in the in lay terms, like you might read a book. So, but for the test, subconscious is never the right answer. It's preconscious. Okay, but the majority of our stuff was in the unconscious. This picture is called topography, and it really is just, it's because it's a map. It's our topography. Okay, so Freud believed that the job of a psychoanalyst or psychodynamic therapist, and for the test, used interchangeably. In the real world, psychodynamic are people who have a shorter approach to psychoanalysis. So anyone there definitely would believe that their job is to bring all that stuff here to the top. So anything in your unconscious would just need to come to the top. Okay. So then Freud believed he had a couple of ways of doing that. Okay. So so what's my Rorschach? My ink blot. So Freud would say, look at this. And then you would tell him what you saw. And then what would Freud do?
Challenge your ego.
He would. Very good. Very good. He would tell you what it really meant. Because these are projectives, and you're projecting your unconscious onto the picture. He would tell you what that really meant. Because you poor little woman, and he mainly treated women, you know nothing. Let me tell you what that really means. So not only is it projective, like a projector, it's also subjective. So it really kind of meant objective are things that I can, are for sure, and subjective are things that someone's opinion. So if you see things that are subjective, it definitely would be this. Can everybody kind of mute? So if you're not talking, just mute. I can mute you all. Very good. Just mute it for me. I don't mind if you're sharing, talking, unmute, please. I love a conversation, but the background noise makes me old. Okay, so that's an ink blot or the Rorschach. Freud did another type of projective. What was the other one he's famous for? You know those pictures? The thematic appreciation test. Okay.
Oh, is that the same thing where the ink bolt came from?
Repeat, where
that type of that's the type of test that you do, right? Like a projective test.
It is, exactly.
So that's where the ink bolts came from when Freud did that, when you did that explanation of what did you see?
So it's not necessarily the where it came from, but he used both of these. Okay, so this is the thematic projection. He did the same thing. So he would say, so please look at this woman. What do you think she's thinking? And what he believed is that you were projecting from your unconscious what you thought, and then he would tell you what that really meant. Okay. So when it comes to any of this, again, the psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, the client knew nothing. The therapist was brilliant and they knew nothing. So my job as the clinician at that time was just to kind of tell you what you really meant. So projective as well as subjective. Okay, so those are Freud and Freud's theories. He was the first person that came into talk therapy. Okay, so Freud had those like defense mechanism things. Remember those? Somebody give me a few defense mechanisms. There's about really like 50 or 60, but we only need a few. And there's only usually a few on the test. Subjective is the opposite of objective. So if you write SOAP notes or on the test, if you see SOAP notes, SOAP, SOAP notes are subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. So objective is a fact. It is 6:33 my time. That is objective. Subjective is it's dinner time. In my head, it's dinner time. So that's my opinion, my thought. That is subjective. So when Freud, when we say those tests were subjective, they were based on what that person thought. So the social work test is objective. It's a fact. You passed, you didn't pass, objective. Subjective is when my opinion comes into play. Okay?
Thank you.
You're so welcome. And if I have two screens, so if I don't hear that ding over there, be sure and just remind me again or say I have a question. I'm trying to monitor with both my phone and my watch so to hear if questions come up. So Freud then had defense mechanisms. What he believed is that these were our way of protecting ourselves. Okay? So I think most of them you're familiar with. Ask me questions. Which ones are you not familiar with?
What's the difference between projection and displacement? Because they seem very much alike.
Very good. Okay, so displacement is, and I know none of you have never ever done this, but I have 3 children, and only one lives at home. And I have been upset with one of the 2 that don't live here, and the one who came home did something wrong, little, and I blew it out of proportion. I took my anger out on the one who was here because it was safer or easier than the one it really belonged to. Okay, so I can be, that's my dog, wow. So most often you'll see the question, I'm mad at my boss, and I come home and I take it out on something. It doesn't have to be a person. You can be mad at your boss and come home and kick the door. I'm displacing the anger, displacing the feeling. I'm really mad at this person, but it's safer to put it out on this person. Okay. Projection, I always think of a movie theater, the projector. Who's at my front door? Okay, the projector. So in a projector, I am projecting all of my stuff onto you. Okay, so if I go to work tomorrow and I think that, wow, I'm late, I didn't have time to shower, I must stink, oh my gosh, all these thoughts are in my head, then I am projecting onto you. So if I see you over there in the corner, you must be thinking I stink. So I'm projecting my faults, my stuff onto others, that you must think that about me because I think that about me. Okay. Give me another one. So I have on the screen, I don't have suppression, but what's the difference between suppression and repression?
One of them is what? unconscious and one of them is conscious.
Bingo! You get the bell. Yes. Which one is which?
I think.
I think suppression is more unconscious.
Yeah.
Repeat. Subconscious is, suppression is?
Unconscious.
Other way. Thank you, though. So you might see the question that says, the woman remembers that she was sexually abused as a child, but she chooses not to deal with it. Suppression. She knows, she chooses. Repression is, I don't remember that it happened. Remember, Freud believed everything was in my unconscious. So if I'm repressing it, I don't even remember.
So repression is unconscious, or it's the other way around?
Repression is unconscious. Suppression is not.
Okay.
Okay. Regression. Somebody give an example.
If you've had a trauma, basically at 11 or 12, you kind of stay at that stage. You don't progress to the next stage in development.
That is true. However, on the test, what it'll look like more is, 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay, so regression is, yes, you'll go down to a lower level. However, on the test, so what you'll see, a man is in a boardroom. He's having a fight, and he's mad at his boss. He walks out and he slams the door.
Okay.
Okay, so it is going down to a lower stage. It is, acting younger than you are. However, the question, and anyone please feel free to chime in, I've not seen it be that simple. What they're looking for is like, how would an adult regress? Okay, so if I act like a stupid little kid, then I'm regressing. Okay.
I know on the test, I got that. I think I didn't got that one wrong, but on the test it was like a woman had just broke up with her boyfriend she was with for 6 years, and she went home and cried to her mom. So would that be a
that
regression?
would be perfect. That exactly, because she's acting like younger than she is. Okay, perfect. Okay, I thought you were going to say she broke up with him and went and torched his clothes or something. Sorry, that was me projecting projecting my stuff. So that's a good example, a very good example. So another one is the reaction formation. I get a lot of questions on that one. What does that look like?
Acting opposite of what you present or believe.
You are. Can you give an example? Good.
If you say that, if deep down you know that you are gay, and then you go hang out with people who are not gay, you say, oh, I don't like gay people, but you know that you are gay yourself.
You've got it. You've good. Perfect. You're forming a reaction different than you actually feel. You might see a question, a man is just fired from work, and he goes home and he, plans a family vacation. So he's lost his job and he's worried, but he does something different. So a reaction formation, I always think you form a reaction opposite of what you feel. Okay. Compensation is when you're making up for something. So many times the question I've seen is a dad who doesn't see his children very often. When he comes to pick them up, he then, buys them lots of things. Or a friend who, a friend is shopping, girls are shopping together, and that one girl can't keep up. So what she does is she buys all of them the other things. That's an example again of she is compensating. Incongruent behavior. You got it. Thank you. Okay, so we talked about displacement. Denial, if you see denial on the test, make sure that that is the best defense mechanism, okay? Denial is most often the answer if it's a substance abuse question, but when it comes to the other defense mechanisms, denial, the assumption is all of these are denial, so make sure that's the best answer of all of those other defense mechanisms. Okay. Another one that comes up is sublimation. Someone give me an example of that.
Sublimation may be like if you're angry and you decide to start take up boxing to let out some of your anger.
Close. But it's more of my feelings are not appropriate. Society says they're not okay. So so if I am a very angry female, because that behavior is not acceptable in a female, and I decide to box, that would be because what I'm trying to hide is I'm hiding my real feelings. Okay. So the question I've seen is, you are a woman who is very boisterous and verbal and you like to argue. And while those things may not be considered very feministic or okay, if you become an attorney, it's fine.
Okay.
So if I, I like to, see blood, I like to cut things. If I become a butcher, it's good, doctor. So I'm hiding my feelings and putting them in someplace more acceptable. Many of you are not old enough to remember, but we used to think that if you played, an album is that big thing, not a CD album. If you play the album backwards, there were hidden messages.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember doing
that. Exactly. Okay. So that's what sublimation is. That was called, sublimation, hidden messages. So sublimation is there are things that are hidden underneath that I'm afraid to bring out in the real world, but I can put them in a career or something that's more acceptable. Okay? And again, those are all they're hidden. Okay. Any other questions on those? Okay. So that's my Freud. Go ahead. So I've talked about Freud, his id, ego, and superego, his unconscious, his subconscious, and all of those things. What else? Okay. So first, again, Freud came along. He was my psychodynamic. Then Erikson actually was next. Erikson is a psychodynamic. He's a psychosocial. He looked at the way that our psyche is the psychological part, as well as the social emotional developed. So if you see, if the question says, who is the theorist, who is the psychoanalytic theorist that takes the stages to adulthood? That's Erikson. Okay, so but he was a psychoanalyst theorist. He was a follower of Freud. He didn't believe everything was as unconscious as Freud did, but he did believe that part of that was. So it was a combination of both. Okay, so Erikson's theories, and I know they're so hard, and I cannot give you an acronym. Anybody know a way to remember them? Please share. I talk about how they build on each other. Okay, so you can't really have the other one. You get stuck. Erikson believed you also could get stuck in that stage. Okay. Anybody taken the test recently? Have you seen the question about what is supposed to develop out of that stage? The virtue developed?
Okay. I took it in October. I don't remember a question like that.
Okay. So sometimes I've seen, and again, I took the test lots of years ago, and I do, my most current knowledge is based on my students, and one of the things, once you pass, I will ask you to please share with me. I'm not asking you for every detail of the test, but I'll ask you if there's something that you haven't, that I didn't cover, or something that surprised you, or just give me some heads up for my future clients to please pay it forward, and that's how I keep up to date with the test. So things like this one, though, hope, will, purpose, and most of those things I think you can figure out when it comes to those. I wish I could give you a clue, an acronym to easily remember them. Anybody have a thought or a plan they've used?
It's too many eyes.
There are too many eyes.
Like, I know the first three, but after that, I'm like, I know the last one is like hard to get to, I think. That's it.
So that there really is some method to the madness. Okay. So of course, you know that trust versus mistrust, those are your babies, right?
Mhm.
And the next one is your autonomy versus shame or doubt. That's focus on potty training. Okay. So anybody got a 2-year-old, 3-year-old that's trying to potty train, and you think they've gotten the big boy diaper or big boy underwear, and they potty on themselves still, they feel very shameful. Okay, that's the easiest way to remember that. That's my kids who try to potty train. Autonomy, they think they can do it. They're ready to wear the big boy diapers or big boy underwear, and they have an accident. Okay.
And I know a way to remember. I mean,
Go
if you
ahead.
think about it, like trust versus mistrust is an infant. Autonomy versus shame and doubt is a toddler. Initiative versus guilt is preschool years.
Got it.
And industry versus inferiority is early school years, like primary school years. Like
It is.
that's how I remember. High school is identity versus.
Oh, that's the one I remember for sure.
Yeah, high school. Then you got adult, like intimacy versus isolation. Middle age, where my parents are, and integrity, despair. That's kind of like where my like my grandparents are. I don't know. That's how I remember.
And I think it's great, especially if you have people in that age, you can put it in there. That makes it easy. I'm in generativity versus stagnation, so I that's where I'm at. But let's just make sure. Thank you very much. So let's look at that 3 to 5, and you said initiative versus guilt. Those are my 3 to 5-year-olds. They're trying new things. They're trying to grow up. If I have a younger brother, younger sister, I might bring you the baby. Mommy, look. Mama freaks out. Kid feels guilty. 5 to 13, that is, and you're right, that's when I start elementary school. What does industry mean? Industry versus inferiority?
Like math, is that like school performance, wanting to get A's, like trying to master things?
It is. Industry is what I'm good at. So in your town, in your city where you live, most of your areas are known for whatever industry. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we have a Volkswagen plant here. We have the Tennessee River. Our industry is what our city is known for. So those you're starting first grade. And I know all y'all remember the little kid who couldn't read so great, or the little kid who got picked last for the basketball team. That was me. Yes. Okay. So my industry wasn't sports, but I was the best reader in the class. Okay. That's what you're good at. So in elementary school, between that starting school and starting middle school, you figure out what you're good at. And again, it may be sports, it may be band, it may be singing, whatever. That's your industry. So what Erikson said is if you didn't figure out what you're good at, then you would feel inferior. So that's what that goal is, competency. Okay. Anybody want to share what you were good at in elementary school?
I was good at like reading, very advanced in my class.
Yeah, so, and everybody knew you were the smart little girl, didn't you? Probably sit in the front row going, teacher.
Yeah, and that's how it was throughout college. Yes. But I feel like I'm fumbling with this test. Now I feel inferior.
So this test is not a reflection of your skills. This test is only a reflection of learning what they want you to learn. It is not a reflection of how you work as a counselor. Not at all. So don't ever think that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just true. It's a matter of teaching how to pass the test. That's all. What they're asking for. But anybody else want to share their industry? What were you good at? Got any athletes in the group?
Or like problem solving.
Okay. So, and I ask you again, not to try to, I like it when you converse with me, but I want to make it real. You will not forget industry. And I know there are lots of eyes, but if you remember what you were good in elementary school, you won't forget that. Okay. So your industry is what you were good at versus being inferior. Okay. So I'm going to share with you, I went to a majority white high school. And as you can see, I'm of color. So, back in the day, and I'm 54, so all the black kids were supposed to be good athletes, right? I never got picked for the teams. Like, what do you mean? Me? I'm not supposed to be. No, I have like no athletic ability whatsoever. So I remember feeling very inferior when it came to all those things. I just wasn't. But I remember that. So whatever you're good at, whatever you were good at in elementary school, that's how you remember that stage. What is your industry and what made you feel bad? Okay. So then you start middle school, 13. Oh, yes, middle school, you're growing up. Identity versus confusion. Remember when you were in like 8th grade and all your friends dressed alike?
Yes, very corny.
It was
Been
cool.
there.
Excuse me. It was cool when you were 12 and 13, okay?
It
We all
was.
playing. We all had those jeans. Come on, it was cool, right? That's your
Yes.
identity. So what happens in that stage is you're supposed to be able to then take that identity from not knowing who you are to figure out who you are. If you dress like your friends at 21 and went out, hello, that would not be so cool. So that's what that means. So if you can really kind of put that in your life, and I love Erikson stages, they're very real. So if you kind of, again, instead of working on memorizing, just remember where you were or the people in your life at the time. So industry versus identity versus confusion. You figured out whether you like boys or girls or tall boys or short boys or tall girls or short girls. You figured that out. That's who you were. Okay, so again, that 13, that middle school is awful, absolutely awful. But by the time you finished high school, started college, you figured out your identity. And again, if he said if you didn't figure that out, you'd be confused. And I think we do have people as adults who are still confused about their sexual identity, because according to Erikson, they didn't figure it out in that stage. So if you figure it out between 21 and 39, you find several somebodies. You figure those somebodies out until you know who you are. And you didn't know who you were till you knew what you were good at. So then your intimacy versus isolation, of course, is being in that relationships. Okay. And then, so in order to then get to the next stage, I had to have been in a relationship. Generativity versus stagnation. What does that mean?
Like, what are you, based on how you were raised or what you experienced, what are you going to give to the next generation? That's how I remember.
Yes, good. And if you didn't have a relationship before, do you have a next generation?
No.
Probably not. So that's exactly how they fall on top of each other. Great job. Okay. So generativity is I want to continue to produce. I want to continue to give back. I want to not be done. Okay. So the other choice is to stagnate, and stagnate is I'm done. Anybody in this group my age but me? In that group category but me?
My soul that age.
I'm 46.
Okay, so I keep my soul's young. So, but in my age, I teach college. So, and I'm sure probably you have some professors who had some professors who were done. A lot of my friends are done. They teach the same syllabus they taught 20 years ago. I'm like, what are you doing? Because they're stagnated. They're done. You get tenure. I don't have to worry about being fired. So why not? They're just done with life. So I have a lot of friends who are stagnation. They're done. Okay. And then a lot of my friends also who are not professionals, who've kind of been moms. Their kids grow up, and then also they don't know what to do with themselves. So they're just kind of like, done with what's going on. They're done. Okay. And then my last one is my old people. Okay. So what's that? Integrity versus despair.
Is that when you are more, content with your life is coming to an end and kind of being content with it versus dreading dying?
You got it. You got it. So integrity is I'm good. I'm good. I did some right things. Looking back at my life, I left some legacy. I've got some people, because again, generativity, but then goes into integrity. Okay. Do you know people who at the end of their life who are in despair? Have you ever worked with hospice? Have you ever seen people who were too angry to die? There are. They're just like there's some things they didn't want to do. They didn't want to do. They didn't get done. And they're in despair. So according to Erikson, the goal was you don't want to end up in despair. You don't want to end up there. You want to kind of make all these choices so you don't end up there. Okay. Does that make it at least easier to understand if you kind of put it into your own words?
Definitely. Oh, definitely.
Okay. And again, the way, to remembering kind of what age you are is very important, but understand kind of what happens in the stages. You'll see a question about a woman who is in her 40s, and she's in her mid 40s, and she has spent her whole life working on her career, and now she is looking back, and she's looking back of what she missed. So the question would be, what stage is she in? So she's in her mid 40s, but she's looking back. What stage would she be in?
How you say that? Generic and stagnation.
But she never had the love of her life. She's still stuck in that intimacy stage.
Oh.
Okay. So when you see the test, look for the age numbers, definitely, but also look for what the question's asking me. So I'm not going to go back, 12 stages, but sometimes it might say, I'm 21, but I never figured out what I was good at. So I might be still stuck in that industry stage. So ages definitely matter, but make sure you read the question to know like what's actually going on in those stages. Okay. So after Erikson came along, he's my psychodynamic, my behavior people came along. Okay. Who are my behaviorists? Got two biggies.
Skinner.
Yes.
Pavlov.
You got it. Skinner did what? What was his theory called?
Not classical conditioning.
What did you say?
What was
not classical. That is correct. Not classical.
That's Pavlov. What was Skinner's?
Operant conditioning.
Operant.
Yes, operant. Operant condition means I learn by rewards and consequences, okay? So he did the Skinner box, and he had little rats or the pigeons that would go through the box, and they would either get rewarded or they would get consequenced based on their action, and they learned to stop based on their action, okay? So this one gives my students a lot of trouble sometimes. Tell me the difference between negative and positive reinforcement and negative and positive negative and positive punishment. What's the difference?
Would I guess like an example would be if your child is probably doing like bad behavior, but you still give them a reward or something. Would that be
why would I give them a reward if they're being bad?
But I'm saying, like, wouldn't that be like one of these, like?
No, if they're bad, I'm gonna consequence them.
I thought like some people would like reinforce their bad behavior by not addressing it, but they still give them stuff. Is what I'm trying to say. Maybe I'm not saying it right.
and you are. Thank you for sharing. That's what most people think.
Oh, okay.
That's what most people think. So the way that it works, and thank you for sharing and being brave enough, okay? And so I get a lot of, and anybody who took the test recently see these questions?
I'm doing an audio course, and the way that they describe positive punishment is if you a pop machine, if it your pop doesn't come out and you hit it and two pops come out.
I'm sorry?
Like if you're going to if you're trying to put something to get a soda out of the machine.
Yes.
And your soda doesn't come out and you hit the machine and two sodas come out.
Is that a reinforcement or is that punishment?
That was a reinforcement. It was a negative reinforcement.
Probably
What's that?
not. That's probably a positive reinforcement.
Okay,
So
and that's this chart is good because I can kind of talk myself
yeah,
through
and
it.
that's what I
But
want you to do. I want you to, and what I'm hoping for is that you really just talk about it as opposed to learning the verbiage from the text, because that won't help you in the test. You really have to
right,
really understand it. So the way it works is reinforcement. My up arrow always continues the behavior. Always, always up. Reinforcement is I like what you did. I want it to continue, whether it's positive or negative. Okay.
now these different slides, will we have access to these?
This will be, you'll record it, but I will definitely here. I'll give you a copy of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it is recorded though. But anything, and things remind me, anything else I pull up, remind me. It's right in the chat box right there. I'll gladly give you any material I use, anything you don't have, I will gladly give you. No
Okay.
problems at all. Promise, promise. Just remind me, okay? So punishment is when I want to stop the behavior. I do not like what you're doing. I don't like how you're behaving. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to stop it two ways: by giving you something or taking something away. Reinforcement is I like what you're doing. Yay, good job. Hey, so I'm going to give you something or I'm going to take something away. Okay.
Okay.
So give me, you've all read it in the text. Give me an example you've read in the text or a text, APGAR or any of the other study sessions. Be brave.
I haven't read about that yet because clearly, I thought I knew what I was talking about.
And clearly, you really weren't that far away. Just going to tweak you a little bit, okay?
I almost had it.
You did. I'm just going to tweak you. Okay, so those of you who have children or adults in your life, okay, so when you, so a punishment is I don't like the behavior. So if my child this week in school, he comes home on Friday and I get a note from his teacher and he says he did not do his homework this week and she is upset with him. What is something I could give him for punishment?
Extra chores.
Yes. What else?
Wait, what was the question?
So if my child, he comes home from school this week and I get a note from his teacher and the teacher says, little Johnny did not do his homework this week. He earned a 0. And as a mom, I don't like that. I want that behavior to stop. I'm going to punish him. So what could I give him to serve as a punishment?
You could also give him make him do the homework that he didn't do.
Okay, give him extra homework, yes. Okay, give him a smack on the face, right? Shoot, Johnny, behave. Okay, this is not real life. This is for the test. Okay, come on, Johnny, can't believe you did that. I'm giving him something, right? I'm giving him extra chores. I'm giving him some physical punishment. I'm giving him extra homework. Those are all things that will stop that behavior, right? That's what I'm trying to do. Punishment is the term that Skinner would use is extinct. Stop the behavior. Okay. So what is something I could take away that would still stop the behavior?
His games.
Exactly.
Screen time.
Okay. If I gave him a timeout is negative punishment. I'm taking him away from the environment. Okay. So that's negative. I'm taking it away. So reinforcement. Johnny did a great job this week. You got all A's. I'm so happy for you, Johnny. Yes, thank you. You made Mama happy. What could I give him that would continue the behavior? It would reinforce it. What could I give him?
Some one-on-one time with Mom.
Yes, he would love that. Now, what could I take away that would reinforce the behavior? He did a great job, but I want to take away something, maybe something he doesn't like. What could I take away?
Wait, so you take something away that he doesn't like so he will do his homework?
Yes, you're happy with him.
So why would you take something away?
You could take away the restrictions that you had on his games.
You could, yes.
Okay.
How about
okay, I get it.
So what about if his bedtime was 8:30 and I took that away and let him stay up till 9. Isn't that something that's reinforcing him, right?
Right.
Mhm.
That's I'm taking away something. So your spouse, that you come home from work this week. Oh my gosh, the floor is vacuumed and they clean the house. You're so excited, you love it. What is something you could give to your spouse to reinforce them?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
So your spouse, you came home this week, your significant other, you came home from work this week, you've been studying after this session, you're done, you realize they have vacuumed and they've cleaned the whole house. You are so happy. What could you give them that would make the bed? Yes! Thank you! A trip to the bedroom. Thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Pam, I just want to say this is what I needed to be able to talk these things through.
That's what
And I have had other recordings, but it was just them talking.
And I don't want that.
For an hour and letting us ask questions later. This is what I needed to be able to put these things into real world situations. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really just want you to, and again, the book learning is really important, but if you don't understand it for you, you're not going to be able, if you don't digest it, you can't spit it back out.
Right.
Okay. So then reinforcement, negative reinforcement, that same thing. The honey, yes, he cooked dinner. I'm so excited. What can I take away that would make him do this again?
Take away my nagging.
Yes! God, yes.
I was gonna say, take it back. How many days you hold on?
I am pretty sure that's a question. If you stop, you're taking something away, that nagging, okay? A easy one that you'll see on the test, or I mean your sample test sometimes is that seatbelt, okay? So you are, the car manufacturers want you to buckle your seatbelt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you get in the car and you're driving, if you don't buckle that seatbelt, what do you hear?
Ding,
ding, ding, ding.
So if you buckle your seatbelt, what happens?
It goes
away. Stops.
Away. They took it away. That's negative reinforcement. Something you didn't want to do anyway, they took away. Okay. If a very good one for most of my friends this time of year is when you go on a diet, you're good, you're watching your weight, you're trying really good. You get on that scale, the numbers go down.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Positive reinforcement.
Positive.
So giving me something. So I did what I was supposed to do. I did good. I stuck with my diet. I'm good. My numbers go down.
So that's a positive punishment because it decreased the behavior of me overeating, right?
How about, but my numbers went down, like my scale went down. So it's a negative. It's a negative reinforcement.
Okay.
You took away the pounds.
Ooh, I'm in confusion.
So negative reinforcement is taking away something I don't want. I don't want the pounds. So anything you take away that will help my behavior increase. Okay. So if I'm on a diet this week, I'm good. I'm doing the right thing. I get on the scale. The pounds are 5 pounds less this week than last week. I lost 5 pounds. Am I going to keep dieting?
Yes.
Yes. But it's a negative reinforcer because I lost the weight. You took away stuff I didn't want. I didn't want that weight. So negative reinforcement is going to help me continue my behavior but by taking away something I didn't want anyway. Okay. So the theory of is if you cook dinner, I'll clean up. That's a negative reinforcement. I'll cook, but I don't have to clean. You took that away from me. You want my behavior to continue. Okay. Somebody give me an example.
So it's like compromising.
For the test, it's just negative or positive reinforcements. Compromise is not an answer, but yes.
Like the example you just described, cause like sometimes I try to think of a word or something I can remember to explain something like that helps me. So the taking you do this task for me and I'll do this, it's like compromise. You took something away from me.
You took something that I didn't want to do anyway. Okay, so that's the key. Okay, so if I go to work every day this week and I show up on time and Monday through Thursday, oh my gosh, I'm home time every day, and my boss says, Pam, you did great. Since you've been here every day this week, you can take Friday off. What would that be?
Negative reinforcement.
Exactly. I don't want to go to work Friday anyway. So he took it away from me. Okay. So if I am driving home from work tomorrow and I am going 75, 80 miles an hour, I get pulled over. The cop wants to stop my behavior, right? What could he do? What would he give me that would stop my behavior? What kind of punishment could he give me?
A ticket.
Okay.
Ticket.
Got it. What could he take away from me?
My license.
My right to drive, impound my car, take away lots of things. Okay. So that's what it is. So remember, reinforcement is always increasing behavior. Whether I'm giving or taking away, I want the behavior to continue. Okay. And then whether I'm giving or taking away, if I want to stop the behavior or make it extinct, that is my punishment. Okay. Ask me questions. Is that clearer than mud now?
I'm gonna have to like go over these on my own again.
I suggest that you do and watch the video over and over again to just really get it. Okay, so the goal again is if I want to, you see my arrows, increase it. Whether I take away or give, I just want it to increase. And then where I want to stop it, that's positive or negative. Either I give something or I take something away. I have to stop that behavior. Okay. Skinner also had some terms called a flooding and systematic desensitization. What are those?
Flooding is when you have like someone like something that's fearful, and then to help them combat the fear, like you just tell them like, hey, if you're scared of airplanes, you just take them on the plane.
Perfect.
Versus like systematic desensitization is slowly getting them to combat their fear.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Exactly it. Flooding, I think of, if you got a kid who's afraid of the water, you just throw them in. Okay, not if they can swim, but they're afraid, you just throw them in. That's flooding. Okay, and the other one is slowly. So in vivo and systematic desensitization, both of those terms for the test are interchangeable. Okay. And I'm going to use those with phobias. So like if someone
so wait, are you saying that systematic desensitization and in vivo are like the same thing on the exam?
For the test, yeah.
For the test? Okay.
Yeah, for the test, they're the exact same thing. We're not going to do that. The test doesn't discriminate the difference. The goal with systematic desensitization is that what you're trying to do is show that energy, that anxiety level goes up, but it won't kill you. So with in vivo, or I'm sorry, with the systematic, what I do is I'm going to slowly introduce, like you said, but the goal is then, so we get to the airport. If you're afraid of flying, we get to the airport. Okay, your anxiety goes up, it goes up, it goes up, and then it just kind of comes back down. Next time, we're actually going to go inside the airport. Anxiety goes up, goes up, goes up. You think you're going to die, it doesn't happen, it goes back down. Okay, until it actually gets you on the plane. So those are two types of dealing with phobias, systematic or in vivo. There's something else called implosion. Is anyone saying that word on the test?
I didn't see it on the last one.
Okay. Implosion is flooding, but not real. So it's either like, we use like these VR headsets now, so you can pretend like you're there. Okay, or imagination. So your therapist would say, imagine this happens, imagine this happens. That term is called implosion, but it's the same technique as flooding. It's just in your head. Okay, there's nothing left in that jar. Who's ever scraping? It's empty. I'm just telling you. These belong to Skinner, and these are his behavior techniques. Okay. My other guy was Pavlov, and he comes up with those terms like what? So he does my classical conditioning, and he pairs things, right? So most often the question that I see is like the difference between the stimuli and the response. So the stimuli is what I am responding to. So all of us have been classically conditioned thanks to AT&T, Verizon, whatever phone company you have. So when your phone rings, do many of you have a tone or a sound for a different person?
Not in 2020. Everybody get the vibrate.
Okay. Surely some of y'all got a different sound for some people's that you like, you don't like. No? Okay. So I'm old, I guess. My children have like rings. With my children, I want that ring to be special because if I'm doing something, I want to know it's my kids. So that is, I am paired to that sound. That sound meant nothing to me before. And then I've taken that sound and I have paired it with my children. So when that phone rings, I don't even have to look at my phone. I have a feeling because I know who it is. If my phone rings at 2 o'clock in the morning and that's my son's ring, what happens?
Do you get worried?
Exactly. That ring didn't mean anything to me before. It was unpaired. It was just an unpaired, unconditioned stimuli. It was just a ring. But I've paired it now with my son. So I know when I hear that sound, that's my son. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's my son. My heart races. That's all that means. So unconditioned stimuli means it had nothing to do with it. Then I paired it with something. So then it becomes a conditioned stimuli. And the conditioned response is how I feel. So with Pavlov, the conditioned response was the dog salivating. Okay. Everybody pretty good with Pavlov?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So then we've got the first two. So that was my psychoanalytic theory. That was Freud. The second one came along with behaviorists. My behaviorists we had Erikson and Freud. And then we had Skinner and Pavlov. Then sometimes it's called let me go back to Freud a little bit. So transference, what is that?
That's when the client is putting their problems on you.
Okay. No. Is transference good or bad?
Good.
Mm-hmm. Neither.
Neither?
Okay. So sometimes Freud referred to that as the third force or the extra thing in the room. You might see that term. That's that transference. Okay. So transference is, again, the client puts his feelings onto me. Freud wanted that. Freud encouraged transference. He wanted you to put your stuff onto the client. And then countertransference, of course, is when I have my feelings or onto the client. Okay. So it's, they remind me of somebody. There's something about them that I like or I don't like. Either one of those things, or that just is. It's not good or bad, just is. So that is for the test, that is one of the very few times that go to the supervisor is the right answer. So that you go to the supervisor when there's something going on in the therapeutic setting. Okay? So he's got transference, you've got countertransference. There's a question about your client is using racial slurs or making some things about race. So anything that happens in that clinical setting, that's when the answer is go to the supervisor. Okay, that's what they're there for. Okay. Other than that, that's pretty much the only time you go to the supervisor. Can anybody give me another time where that's the correct answer?
To go to the supervisor? Maybe dealing with the parent.
Oh, it's still you.
No.
Even if you are, the question about if you're in a rural setting and no one, you're the only person that is there and you're not aware of you're not familiar with that type of treatment, then that one is often to learn, but it's usually not go to the supervisor.
Okay.
And do we ever refer out to another therapist?
If we're not well versed in a particular modality.
That's the only time. Other than that, the assumption is you are the very best social worker on this planet.
I had a question on the test where it said a client was out in a rural area. You two both attend the same church. And I can't remember all the options, but I know one of them was to discuss what's the word? You discuss something with the client, like, as far as, I know it's like an ethical thing, because
most often that's
dual
relationships. Yeah. And I don't know what the question said, but the answer is to do everything you can to make sure that you're responsible for that. You don't have to move churches, but you're going to do everything you can to protect the client. So that means sit on the other side of the church. So you can't avoid that, especially in rural areas.
Yes. So I think the question was something about, I can't remember exactly what was the words, but it should have, I don't remember what I chose, but I know looking back, I probably should have chose the response if I didn't, to discuss whatever it is with the client. Because I think the other ones were like refer out, and she can't be referred out if you like the only therapist in that area. So I'm sure that was like the best answer, but I can't remember exactly how it was worded.
And it's your responsibility to minimize any possible issues.
Right.
And I teach in a rural area, so a lot of my, I've had a student who was in therapy at the same one of the fellow students was doing an internship. So in working in a rural area, you have to be very, very careful with those boundaries. And many times they're unavoidable. But it's your job to minimize the risk, and that's what the Code of Ethics says. And if I haven't told you all before, read the Code of Ethics. Read it yourself. Don't read APGAR. Don't read TDC. Read the Code of Ethics. Some of those questions are verbatim, exactly what it says. You'll find that same verbiage. Read those codes.
Right. Okay.
Since we're talking about rural areas, so that question about bartering, what's that rule? If you live in a rural area, can I barter?
I saw a question about that. You can, if it's part of the, I think it's like accepting gifts, if that's like the norm. But you should always use discretion. Like,
and again, I work in a rural area, and you know what? If the doctor gets paid with chickens, it's fine. Then you can take chickens too. Okay. Hey, that's the way it is. I don't practice anymore. I only teach. But I can promise you, it's very, it's not uncommon to bring like eggs and So anyway, I moved from like Miami to this very little small town. So I've learned a lot about you. Thank you. A lot. A whole lot. Ooh, culture shock. Okay. So let's go back. So then that was Pavlov. Then we're going to go to next my humanist people. So who are my humanist theorists? My easy one is Maslow.
Oh, I know him.
So what does Maslow tell me?
So basically your basic needs to be met before you can move up his pyramid. Like as a my favorite example is like the criminal justice system.
Okay.
They put all these expectations on people on probation or just got out of jail. They want them to complete all these things, but a lot of them are homeless. They don't have transportation and things of that sort. And then if they don't come to class or something, then they go back to jail. So
you got it. That's absolutely right. And it's called a motivational theory. So his motivational. So our goal is we're more motivated once those needs are met.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone heard the term D needs and B needs?
What's the first one you say?
D needs.
Mm-mm.
No.
Okay. So those first four are called D needs. Those are deficits. And the top one is called a B need. Okay. So I've seen that before on the test. So D needs and B needs. Okay. So the first four levels are my D needs. Those are the deficits, things that I don't have. And by B need is my growth, what I need. Okay. And then how many people actually got to self-actualization according to Maslow?
Probably nobody.
Very few. And he says between 1 and 100. It's 1 out of every 100. I'm sorry, between 1 out of every 100 people get to self-actualization. Okay. And then we can actually move up and down the chart. So things can change in our life where we go up and down the chart. Okay. So Maslow, when he first came out with his hierarchy of needs, that was a really novel approach. And he was the first theorist that really came up with like making sure we address people's needs first. Then we came to Carl Rogers. He is my client-centered person. Client-centered or patient-centered. So tell me about Carl Rogers, somebody.
I don't really remember his theory in depth. But I think like in therapy in general, you should always like focus on the client. Like put their needs in them first.
And you are right. So he's the first person that actually called them the client, not the patient. So the term he said that they were our clients. Mm-hmm. He also believed that again, it was that that client had what they needed to get through this journey. Excuse me. All we had to do was be very supportive of them, and you look for the terms congruence, warmth, genuineness. If we were real, we were non-judgmental, then the client had what it took to get to reach their goals by themselves. Okay, so that's Carl Rogers and his person-centered therapy. Anybody recall seeing him on the test or person-centered?
I don't recall seeing him.
Anybody else want to chime in, Barbara? He's one of our biggies, so sometimes we'll see him. I'm looking for my Skype answers. Okay. So he is one of our biggies. So sometimes we'll see him. And you're going to see, again, person-centered. That's the same as Carl Rogers. And you're looking for the terms incongruence. Congruence. Everything lines up. Congruence is everything, my body, my mouth, everything lines up. As well as then non-judgmental attitude and warm, genuine, just be you. Okay. A couple of the others that you've seen on the task. Does everybody know the crisis intervention model by Roberts? In the APGAR book, it's the 7 stages of crisis intervention.
I briefly reviewed it.
Yes.
Somebody who repeat?
The first step. What, you want me to repeat the steps or?
She really told me.
Mm-hmm.
Dinner must be ready. So yes, tell me the steps.
What Is that like what you would do when there's a crisis happening? Get the person to safety first.
Okay, you're going to make sure the environment is safe. So yes, but the first thing I'm going to do is make sure the environment is safe. And we'll use this whether it's a one person who came with a suicidal issue or school shooting issue, also with a massive shooting or massive crisis intervention. This came about after 9/11. It's kind of the goal that we use, the theory that we use now when it comes to crisis intervention. So you need to know those steps. Okay. So this is our crisis intervention model. Okay. So then I'm going to plan, conduct, and make sure a biopsychosocial assessment. I am not sitting there pulling out my sheet and doing a psychosocial assessment. I'm looking around to make sure everybody's safe. Okay. So whether it's a school shooter situation or a situation where it's someone who may have just attempted suicide, I'm making sure we're all safe before I do anything. Establish rapport quickly. Try to see if I can figure out what happened, whether it's that one person with what happened before you tried to commit suicide, or the people around them. Did you just know what he was thinking, or whether it's a school shooter situation where I'm trying to say, hey, before Johnny did this, what was going on? Okay, and then I'm going to try to explore feelings. That's not till step 4, and for most of us in this field, that's a foreign concept. That we're going to wait till step 4 before we do this. Okay.
No. Oh, we are?
Go ahead.
On the test or in real?
On the test. On the test. On the test. There's no real life in this room. This is on the test. Okay. On the test. This is the answer for the crisis intervention model. The goal of this is to return the person back to their previous state of functioning. So if you see a question about follow up with them or give them resources, any of those things, no, that's not what we do.
Incorrect.
Okay, the goal is to return them back to their prior state of function.
So will it say that, or will it say something about baseline or anything like that?
No. If you see baseline, you're talking like research usually.
Research, okay. So I know in the APGAR book, because I see on here it say establish rapport. She said we have an inclination to select those type of answers because we see these social work terms, and sometimes that's not the correct thing, or like people don't even know how to describe those type of social work concepts. Just the FYI.
Well, thank you,
my fellow group peers.
Thank you. That's what I want, is please share. Please share. I think the process is the goal is to be good for everybody. Just, especially those who've taken the test, who can give some input, those who are about to take the test, just to kind of make sure that you really understand what they're asking. And the goal of this really is just to go to return you to your prior state of functioning. Okay. So I'm going to do a few questions here. Let me pull up some questions. If you've seen these questions already, be nice and don't share the answers. This is an APGAR book, but she has a couple of them. So this is so when it comes to in general for the test, if you know me at all, I'm not a huge fan of the acronyms just because I don't have enough room in my brain to remember them. I'm special like that. What I want you to do always, always, always is if there's an option to assess, I'm going to assess first. If it's not an option, then I'm going to do what I need to do. But before I make any action, I'm going to just make sure that I understand everything I can about the situation. Okay? So for me, that may be probe or ask or any of those things before I actually make a decision. Okay. And then if you're in tutoring with me, I'll say prove it. What in the question proves it? So if you've seen those, if you've had some of the sessions that talks about the answers in the STEM, I truly believe that. They're not trying to trick you. It's making sure that you really understand what they're asking. They're most often the two easy. There's two answers that are not the right answers. You can usually identify those pretty easily, and then go back to the two that might be the right answer and then prove it in the STEM. Okay, so these are, again, just kind of in general. So number 40, and if you guys want to just chime in, type in some answers for me.
I don't know how to type in here, so I'll just wait.
Open your chat box.
Because I was reading while you were talking, and I think I know the answer, so I'll wait.
So if you open your chat box, that's the text. That's the one with the it looks like a text box. If you open that, you'll see, and that's where the recording will be after the end.
Okay, I'll put
A couple in their mid-40s makes an appointment to see a social worker due to sexual dysfunction. During the first section, they report they've recently had a lot of changes due to the children entering college. The husband reports decreased sexual desire that has made physical intercourse difficult. In this situation, what do you do first? That's one of those social work rules. Anybody? Be brave. Come on, type in for me.
Okay. Let me pull this thing up.
The answer to that one is C. I'm always going to rule out medical. Okay, so this one, before we do anything, I'm going to assess. To me, in my mind, assess is still seeing what the bigger problem is. So I'm going to rule out any medical issues. Okay, that's what that little blue pill is for. Cialis or any of those things. That's exactly what that's for. Answer is C. '44, echolalia. What is that?
When a person repeats.
Exactly. And when would I see it?
Possibly. What you want me to say the answer?
Please.
Autism spectrum disorder.
Exactly. That's all. That exactly. So it's like an echo. Ma, 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 da, 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 da. I'm repeating those terms. You got it. Good. Very good. Thank you. Let's look at this one. Hypomania. Hypomania can be characterized as what?
I'm having a hard time. I don't know if I can move these or not, but like where everybody's picture is blocking my question.
Okay. So usually you should be able to move the pictures. They should be able to move around. If you click on them, they should just move.
That did something else.
Are you on your phone?
I'm on my iPad.
Oh, okay, because I just press like anywhere on the screen and then it show a little message thing.
It moved around a little bit.
So usually there is, let's see here. There is okay, at the top, there are one where you can like float the window. It says grid view, speaker view, window, float. So you can kind of move things around.
It's not a big deal. I can maneuver around it.
Okay. So I need to wrap up anyway, guys, because I have another one. But hypomania, the answer to that one is B. So the difference between full-blown mania and hypomania doesn't usually result in enough significance to have to be on medication. But the answer, especially if you're my clinical people, my mania has to last at least 5 days. Hypomania is between 2 and 4 days. Okay, so that's what's the difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. Bipolar 1 is full-blown mania. Bipolar 1, you have more, bipolar 2, you have more depressive symptoms, and then you have less less days of mania. You have days of hypomania. Okay, I'm going to stop recording. So I'll hang out just for a few minutes. If you have just any questions.